Hi, it's Carly here from Triibe. Today I want to share some of my perspectives and experiences around triggering. Prim and I had a few hours of quite intense conversation today, and some of which was really quite challenging, and overall it was super rewarding and satisfying, and a lot of this to me is in the nature of conversations which are activating somehow. And to me, this is the piece of sharing our vulnerability where there's a lot of challenge and nuance involved. So firstly, just what is triggering? So triggering really is where there's some kind of stimulus that comes at us which activates something in our nervous system which has been wired into us from the past. Normally it's some kind of trauma from our childhood, which essentially has us going into a flashback, and it can be really subtle. It can be just some subtle kind of dynamic, or just something that somebody said, or could even just be a subtle sense, like a sense of smell or something, and it can very easily have us flash back into emotions that have been wired into us from intense experiences growing up. And one of the first really important things for me learning around triggering is just realizing that actually I get triggered all the freaking time, which has been quite a confronting realization. It doesn't have to be really intense triggering when I'm really fucked up and really emotional, but it can just be quite subtle stuff, where I just might just feel a bit out of place, or I lose a bit of presence, or I'm feeling something for some kind of reason. So firstly, just learning how to actually own that I'm triggered, or even own that I might be triggered, has been really important process for me. And I just actually, that last part of own that I might be triggered. The nature of triggering means that part of our awareness actually shuts down. We start to go into a bit more fight, flight, freeze, fawn style response. And in that kind of response, we start to lose some of the higher order functioning that we have in our brain. And so there's kind of this cool joke in a way that when we get triggered, it's actually harder to know that we've been triggered, because we lose some of the self-awareness that would have us know that we're actually in that place. So even just embracing that we might be triggered and actually saying that, I think, is a really important thing. And so Prem and I had this intense conversation today, and I was definitely triggered. I had quite a lot of intensity in my system. And what I've been starting to practice when I know that I've gone to this trigger place, or I just think I might be going to this trigger place, is really noticing what's happening in my body and start to just speak to sensation. We've done some other videos around the importance of that. And when I'm in that kind of place, I'm thinking back to how I felt today, normally there's a lot of energy in my system. I'm feeling a lot of sensation. Quite often it's around my gut, or it's around my heart. Sometimes I feel I am today, feeling a prickly sensation in my shoulders, feeling all the sensation associated with emotions that I was feeling. So I was feeling hurt, and so there was a tightness in my chest. So just really staying with that sensation and speaking it. And then actually just doing a lot of paraphrasing. So paraphrasing back, the things that I heard Prem saying. Normally what happens if I'm in a conversation where I'm feeling quite triggered, it's hard for me to actually take in the things that the person's saying. And then what they're saying is actually part of the trigger, right? It's that's the stimulus that's triggering me. So to paraphrase it, it's I'm taking in that stimulus which is triggering me even more. And I find there's this place of it kind of short circuits my system, where I'll start saying the thing back, and it's oh, so what I heard you say is, and it's hard to actually even get the words out. But that feels like a really important part of actually being able to digest what's being said, and not shut down and such that I'm not actually even hearing the other person, because I'm just so lost in the loudness of my experience. So doing these two things, speaking to sensation and paraphrasing, has an effect basically slowing the conversation down a whole lot, because when there's activation in the conversation, it can just get really fast and get out of control really, really quickly. And so it slows the conversation down, and it has like one person at a time being heard, and such that that person can actually get all of their perspective shared, which doesn't happen when there is that kind of super fast activation going on. And to me, when I'm able to have conversations that have these approaches in them, it's like amazing what can happen. It's like all of the energy in that triggering can get processed, and it can have like amazing just like connection emerge out of the place and insights. And that was my experience today. I just ended up seeing essential parts of myself, touching in on kind of core innocent parts of my heart, and places in me that are super vulnerable. And it was just in that process of kind of going slow enough and listening and taking in what Prem was saying and sharing my perspective that kind of led me to get to this kind of level of my experience and self-connection, which is super beautiful and amazing to me. What else do I want to say? So one extra piece that I think is important is that sometimes we're not actually in a space to have a conversation, and I think that's important too. Sometimes it's like better to actually say, hey, I'm not resourced enough to actually be able to go into this conversation now, and can we do it tomorrow, or once I've had more rest, or whatever it is. And I don't want to caution against that being like a completely avoiding the hard conversations, but being resourced and being ready to like go into this kind of mode that I'm talking about, of like sharing sensation and sharing and paraphrasing the other person. It makes a big difference, to be rested and whatever it is that we need. I think the very last thing I want to share is just kind of re-emphasizing my passion around this. I think it's like learning to go into this form of communication when there's a lot of intensity. It's just like, it can be so magical. And as I'm getting better and better at this, it's like I'm starting to actually look forward to where there might be places of conflict, because I'm starting to trust that if I respond to the conflict and the triggering in this kind of way, that it's actually got all of these beautiful openings that can occur in it. And that's like, seems just really amazing to me, particularly after having some like conversations which have like been volatile and erupted and actually caused breakdown in relationships. Cool. Thank you.